state that all the originally created parent and daughter elements, or I should say all the originally created parent elements radioactively decayed into the daughter elements, and after the plasmoid state ended, then the Earth is now in its current state of flat parent-daughter material, and that's how it's pretty much remained.
It's pretty stable, yeah, right. That's right.
Okay. So exactly when are you proposing the plasmoid?
Well, remember with the origin of elements?
Pardon?
The origin of elements talk, you remember that?
Yeah.
That's what this bears on.
Okay.
That all the elements were created in the first 2.5 days, roughly, right?
Okay, so the plasmoid state occurred then like on day 3?
No, it occurred on day 1.
It occurred on day 1.
When God said, the Spirit of God hovered, fluttered, agitated the waters. That was my translation, right? That agitation was imparting energy. That energy was what? Breaking up those water molecules into their hydrogen and oxygen atoms, stripping those atoms down to nuclei, and you had a plasma.
So all your calculations are designed to show how plasmoid state would cause this radioactive
That's
decay
right.
to occur within the 2 to 6
If you admit the existence of a plasma state when it started, then this follows automatically. That's rigid physics right out of the plasma state. Bill?
We couldn't have had a plasmoid state to account for the helium that was discovered in the zircons, because that rapid decay event that has to happen after the zircons were formed.
That's right.
In the crust.
That's right.
The temperatures of a couple of hundred degrees.
Oh, yeah. There would have been a lot of helium given off originally, for sure.
Well, we still don't have an explanation for the rapid decay event that we observed in the zircon.
No. And I don't think that decay event has anything to do directly with the radioactive decay rate problem. I think that decay event has a lot more to do with the diffusion process and how it gets out of those zircons. That's what I think.
But I mean, they have accounted for 1 billion years worth of alpha particles in those crystals.
Mm-hmm.
So that implies that all this rapid decay actually occurred after the granite was formed, not before the crust was formed, correct?
Not necessarily, because you would have had, the zircons weren't formed when they were in the initial state, because all you had was zirconium atoms and oxygen atoms, right? So they were independent. But when that Earth cooled off and everything comes into formation on day 3, right, then all the compounds are coming into existence.
So all those, if all those alpha particles were in the plasma, they would have become helium gas.
Yeah.
They would not be trapped in the crust. That's my point.
Well, some of them would in the cooling process. Some of them are going to be trapped. Remember, you didn't have any crystals till it cooled off and solidified. Then the crystals formed. Well, you had all of this alpha stuff, quite a lot of it around, right? So it was being trapped as those crystals formed. But that would have been, in my way of thinking, in day 3 of creation. Yeah. Any more questions? Okay.
I think earlier on you mentioned something about catastrophic events, formation, the Earth being one and the Great Flood being second.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, did I miss it, or do we have some way of accounting for increased rates of decay during the flood?
I haven't addressed that question at all. I think the likelihood that the energetics would have been uniform enough over an extended period is not very reasonable to accelerate decay rates very much during the flood. There could have been some local acceleration. You'd have to treat the energetics of what went on in the flood within the crust as it was affected by the energetics, You'd have to treat that. That would, to me, would be a much more difficult problem because it didn't all go back to plasma. That's for sure. It couldn't have all gone back to plasma. It's impossible.
A probably not related question, but have you you been able to trace all of the dates that are given for various rock strata back to the initial event? The time of 4,000 or 6,000 years since the creation is nothing. I mean, it's minimal compared to the actual rates of decay of these isotopes now
Mm-hmm.
in their current non-plasma state.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, what we're seeing as far as the times or the dates for these things would essentially be the same as what had been stamped in the rocks at the time of creation.
Pretty much.
Have you been able to verify that in rock strata?
Well, I don't examine rock strata.
Or-
I'm not a geologist. I mean, I don't examine rock strata. I do physics, computations, models, chemistry. I don't fool with, doing geological measurements myself.
So connecting your research with the rock strata, that might be an open area for research.
Well, I don't think there's anything to connect, because once you've established if the decay rates have changed so abruptly, then the whole idea of the strata.
Yeah, but once the plasma was gone, then they went to their slow rates,
Yeah.
which means that your model should predict what kind of age each element is going to have.
Well, that's a next to impossible problem, because you're talking about addressing all the rocks when they formed and all the components of the rocks and being able to describe all the energetics of each. That's an insurmountable problem. That's, the best we could do is just flag wave, There wouldn't be any real substance to that, I don't believe at all. Nobody could do that with any model. There's no way to correlate that directly with rock measurements, because we don't know anything about the history of those rocks. I mean, we can presume, but then what do we do about treating them from that point on? And the whole varieties that you have, all the different minerals and all the different, they're very complex minerals here. Not just the radioactive elements, but all these other elements are there with them, The radioactive elements are in small amounts. It's a horrendous problem to try to treat. It would be virtually impossible. I think you can safely say that strata correlation has no validity if radioactive decay rates have been greatly accelerated. That would be the bottom line, I believe. That's the only way I could say it. Yeah.
I would think that one of the variables of physical amounts of parent and daughter products would be a certain amount.
I can't quite hear that.
I would think that when you have the amounts of parent and daughter products in the actual rocks, that they're tied up with other elements that make them partially water soluble, or they have solubility factors that leaching over time would just totally destroy any type of ratios that you're trying to look at, because they can be greatly affected.
Absolutely, and that's exactly the problem. Those assumptions for radiometric dating of rocks are wrong.
I mean, look at the potassium breakdown to the top.
Yeah, absolutely.
Calcium,
Sure.
99% of that could be gone in 5 years.
I did